Tonight, we're re-stepping into the shadows of one of history's most disturbing and well-documented cases of alleged demonic possession, the exorcism of Anneliese Michel. This isn't just a ghost story. It's a true account supported by court records, medical reports, and hours of haunting audio recordings. What happened to this young woman in the heart of Germany is a chilling puzzle that pits science against faith, leaving us with questions that defy easy answers. Our story begins in Klingenberg, a small, devoutly Catholic town in Bavaria, Germany. This is the home of Anneliese Michel, born in 1952 into a deeply religious family. By all accounts, she was a bright, happy, and pious young girl. But in 1968, at the age of 16, her life took a terrifying turn. She experienced a violent convulsion, the first of many severe seizures that would plague her for the rest of her life. Her parents, Joseph and Anna, were naturally concerned and sought immediate medical help. Doctors at a psychiatric clinic diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a neurological condition known to cause seizures and sometimes even hallucinations. They prescribed medication, hoping to manage her symptoms and allow her to lead a normal life. But this was only the beginning of Anneliese's ordeal. Despite the medical treatment, her condition didn't improve. In fact, it grew profoundly worse. A year later, she suffered another major seizure. While hospitalized, she began describing things that terrified both her and the medical staff. She started seeing what she called devil's faces everywhere she looked. These weren't just fleeting images. They were constant, tormenting visions. Soon after, she began hearing voices. These weren't just whispers. They were clear, malevolent commands. The voices told her she was damned and that she would rot in hell. They tormented her relentlessly, pushing her deeper into a state of fear and despair. The medical diagnosis was updated to include severe depression and psychosis. Her doctors responded by increasing her medication and trying different antipsychotic drugs, but nothing seemed to touch the core of her suffering. Anneliese's life became a living nightmare. The things she once loved, the things that brought her comfort, became sources of unbearable torment. She developed an extreme aversion to religious objects. A simple crucifix, a string of rosary beads, or a picture of a saint would send her into a rage. She couldn't bear to touch holy water, claiming it felt like fire on her skin. She found it physically impossible to enter a church. The sacred ground that once felt like home was now forbidden territory. Her behavior grew more and more erratic and self-destructive. She would stare into space for hours, then suddenly fly into a violent frenzy, screaming, biting, and attacking her family members. She ripped her clothes to shreds, ate spiders and coal, and would even lick her own urine from the floor. The family watched in horror as their daughter transformed into someone they no longer recognized. Desperate and terrified, they felt that medicine had failed them. If science couldn't explain or cure what was happening to Anneliese, perhaps the answer lay somewhere else entirely. Believing their daughter was possessed by demonic forces, Anneliese's parents turned to the church for help. Initially, their requests for an exorcism were denied. The Catholic Church is extremely cautious about such matters, requiring extensive evidence that all medical and psychiatric avenues have been exhausted and that the signs of possession are genuine. The local priests recommended continued medical treatment, but as Anneliese's condition spiraled further out of control, her behavior became even more disturbing. She would perform hundreds of squats a day, over and over, until her legs gave out. She would kneel for hours on the hard floor until her knee ligaments ruptured and her knees were a mass of blood and broken tissue. She barely slept and often refused to eat, claiming the demons wouldn't let her. By 1975, Anneliese was 23 years old, and her situation was dire. The family made a pilgrimage to a place known for its religious significance, where they encountered a priest who, upon seeing Anneliese's state and her violent reaction to sacred places, finally agreed that she was likely possessed. He urged the bishop to approve an exorcism. Finally, after years of pleading, the Bishop of Wurzburg, Joseph Stengel, granted permission. He appointed two priests, Father Arnold Renz and Father Ernst Alt, to perform the rite of exorcism according to the official Roman ritual of 1614. What followed were 10 months of grueling and terrifying sessions. From September 1975 to July 1976, Fathers Renz and Alt conducted 67 exorcisms, usually 1 or 2 per week, with each session lasting up to 4 hours, to document the proceedings and provide evidence to the church. They recorded over 40 hours of these rituals on audio tape. These recordings are perhaps the most chilling aspect of the entire case. On the tapes, you can hear a profound change in Anneliese's voice. Her normal, soft-spoken voice is replaced by deep, guttural growls and high-pitched shrieks. Multiple distinct voices seem to emerge from her, speaking in different languages and tones. These entities, when questioned by the priests, identified themselves with names that are infamous in demonology. They claimed to be Lucifer, Cain, Judas, Iscariot, Nero, and even Adolf Hitler, among others. They would argue with the priests, mock them, and scream in agony when confronted with prayers and holy water. During these sessions, the entities, speaking through Anneliese, claimed they were possessing her as a warning to the modern world, to show people that the demonic realm was real. Anneliese herself, in moments of lucidity, seemed to believe she was suffering as a form of atonement for the sins of wayward youth and apostate priests. It was a bizarre and horrifying form of martyrdom that she appeared to accept. Throughout this entire period, doctors were still involved, though their role became secondary to the religious rites. They continued to observe her, but her physical health was deteriorating rapidly. Convinced that the demons were preventing her from eating, Anneliese almost completely stopped consuming food and water. Her body wasted away. On July 1, 1976, the nightmare came to its tragic end. Anneliese Michel died in her sleep. The night before, she had told the priests, "Beg for absolution." Her last words to her mother were, "Mother, I'm afraid." She was just 23 years old and weighed a skeletal 30 kilograms, or about 66 pounds. The official cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration. The tragedy didn't end with her death. The case became a national scandal, leading to a highly publicized court case in 1978. Anneliese's parents, Joseph and Anna, along with the two priests, Father Renz and Father Alt, were charged with negligent homicide. The prosecution argued that they should have forced Anneliese to receive medical treatment and proper nutrition, and that their reliance on the exorcism rites led directly to her death. The trial became a battleground for the very soul of the case. The prosecution presented the medical evidence: epilepsy, psychosis, and ultimately, starvation. They argued that Anneliese was a mentally ill young woman who was failed by those who should have protected her. Her bizarre behavior, they claimed, was a result of her psychological state, religious indoctrination, and the powerful suggestion of the exorcism rituals themselves. The defense, on the other hand, presented a startling counterargument. They played the audio tapes in the courtroom, filling the space with the horrifying sounds of the exorcisms. They argued that the parents and priests genuinely believed they were fighting a spiritual battle for Anneliese's soul. Witnesses testified to supernatural phenomena during the exorcism's unexplained strength, and voices speaking languages Anneliese had never learned. They argued that Anneliese herself refused medical intervention, choosing to endure her suffering for a higher purpose. In the end, the court delivered a verdict that satisfied no one. All four defendants, the parents and the two priests, were found guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence. However, they were given suspended sentences of 6 months in jail and 3 years of probation. The court acknowledged that they had suffered enough. The case of Anneliese Michel remains one of the most controversial and unsettling events of the 20th century. Was she a severely mentally ill girl whose condition was fatally misinterpreted through a lens of extreme religious belief? Or was she a victim of a genuine demonic possession, a spiritual battle that ultimately claimed her physical life? The medical evidence points strongly towards severe epilepsy and psychosis. Temporal lobe epilepsy can indeed cause complex behavioral changes and hallucinations that could be mistaken for possession. Her strict religious upbringing could have provided the framework for her mind to interpret these terrifying experiences in a demonic context. The exorcisms themselves, a form of intense psychological suggestion, may have exacerbated her symptoms, pushing her deeper into the role of a possessed person. Yet, there are elements that defy simple explanation: the multiple distinct voices on the tapes, her reported ability to speak in languages she didn't know, her extreme aversion to sacred objects, a classic sign of possession in religious lore. To this day, people who listen to the tapes are deeply disturbed by what they hear. They don't sound like a sick girl acting out. They sound like something else entirely. Anneliese's story forced a major revaluation within the Catholic Church. Following the controversy, the German bishops and the Vatican revised the rite of exorcism, emphasizing that medical and psychiatric evaluations are absolutely mandatory before any religious ritual is considered. Her grave in Klingenberg has become an unofficial pilgrimage site for some who believe she was a martyr who died battling evil. For others, it is a tragic reminder of a young life lost to a combination of mental illness and religious fervor. What do you think? Was Anneliese Michel the victim of a treatable medical condition, failed by a system that chose faith over science? Or was she a soldier in an unseen war, her body the battlefield for a fight between good and evil? The truth, whatever it may be, is buried with her. The recordings remain, a chilling echo of her suffering, leaving us to wonder about the thin veil that separates the world we know from the darkness that might lie beyond. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's most haunting cases. If you found this story as compelling as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into the unexplained. Let me know your thoughts on the Anneliese Michel case in the comments below. Stay curious and see you next time.